Hi, my name is Sage, and this week, I decided I wanted to make a rat, as you can see by me drawing faces, but I also wanted to make a swan. So then I thought, why not make the rat swan? Also, his way of transportation is the lily pad, so I'm making him one. And to get started, I'm gonna need some tinfoil, some wire, some clay, and a wooden base. I soon realized that I ran out of tinfoil, so I'm gonna need some more, but first I'm gonna scrunch up the last of it in my hands. Before then, wha-bam, getting a new tinfoil roll. And now I can get even more tinfoil to smush up top of the tinfoil shoe-like shape that I'm making. And you may be like, why are you making this shape? It's because it's gonna be the body of the swan rat. Next, I take some wire and then I measure it by eyeballing it because we don't do math on this channel. And then I take some tin foil and wrap it all around the wire, and this also attaches it to the body as well. So now that my swan rat be looking like a swan, I can then move on to the next step, is to give him arms, and I do that by wrapping some wire around his neck before then cutting it and wrapping it up in tin foil, so now he kind of has like T-Rex / rat arms. I then put some clay on him, and now I am ready to start carving. And since I can't focus, I do a little bit of everything. I work on his ears, his face, I give him some eye sockets, and I also use the ball stylus to kind of smooth things out / give some texture because I'm indecisive. Before then giving him some nubs to make the palms of his hands. Next, I decide that I want to work on making his weapon, and I go through a couple of different ones because I can't seem to get it right. But to start, I'm gonna need some wire. So I cut that, and then I put some tinfoil on it, and then I put some clay up top of it, and then it begins to look like, I want to say, a fat quill. You know what I'm saying? Like a really big feather, and I was aiming for a sword. So I decide to completely discard this and then try and make a hammer instead, because that just made more sense, right? But then the hammer was too heavy for him to hold, so I decided to completely ignore all my problems and start to make his wings instead. And to do that, I take a flattened piece of clay and I put it on his body before then blending everything together. I then take smaller pieces of clay and put them in between the wing and the body to make it look like there's feathers underneath. I then repeat these steps on the other side. And turns out I like the second wing way more, so then I go in again on the first wing and then add some more clay and smooth it out just so that it's a bit thicker. I then get the brilliant idea that I want to make him a mace with spikes, so I begin by making a sphere. But then I realized I should put tinfoil on the wire instead so that it will be easier to cook all the way through, so I do that, and then I roll some clay up top of it. So now the mace is looking like a lollipop. It's now time to add the spikes. And I add them just sporadically around before then taking my ball stylus and blending the base of the spike to the mace itself. And it's still a bit too heavy for him, but I decided that I'm gonna give him fingers and it's gonna fix my problem. And so I embark on my journey of making little logs for his fingers and then blending it onto the palm of his hand. I then repeat this process on the other side as well. And now that his hands are made, I then put the mace into the palm of his hand and curve the fingers around it, and I do the same with the other hand as well to make it nice and secure, or so I think. Ooh. I also thicken up his ear because the mace is resting on it, and I thought that that would also help support it, but then I get distracted and start working on his fingers again. Next, I decide to roll some spheres for his eyes before then popping them into the sockets. After that, I take a small piece of clay and push it on his nose to make his nose, and I use my pointy stylus to make some nostrils. Next, I take a small piece of clay and make a little guitar pick shape so it can be his lower part of his jaw. I then use my stylus and blend it all in together. And now I'm gonna work on the lily pad, and I just take some tinfoil and make a lily pad shape, and I just continue adding tinfoil up top of it until I believe it's wide enough for the Swan Rat. And now the lily pad needs to be covered in clay, and so I do that, and I also use the rolling pin in order to make it nice and flat, as you can tell, because it's in the background. Next, I just do some random touch-ups just here and there. And this is what he looks like before I pop him into the oven, and obviously nothing's gonna go wrong. Until three things did. So the mace head fell off, his ear fell off, and his finger. So basically, he was fighting someone in the oven. I don't know who, but obviously he came out the victor. But it's nothing that a little Gorilla Glue won't fix. So I Gorilla Glue the ear back on and his finger, but I keep the spiky mace part off because I figured it would be easier to paint. So I mean, that was kind of a good thing that it fell off. And now I move on to painting the Swan Rat white, and this is just the first layer. I do end up going over it a couple times. So now that he is extremely blinding to your eyes, I then move on to painting the mace gold. Ooh. And as you can tell, the gold is very transparent, so I have to do a lot of layers, but it turned out pretty good. So now that it's all shiny and golden, I then paint the wire gold as well. And just like the spiky mace part, it takes a few layers as well. But then I move on to painting the eyes black, and then I also do the swan markings on the face as well. And this is a picture of a swan head. I'm doing my best to replicate these markings. And once I'm done with that, I then move on to painting the lily pad green, and I end up having to mix my own green because I don't have this shade. And this is just the first layer, as I do another one later. Then I get distracted again and start to paint his nose orange. Next, I take the wooden base and I paint it a watery blue color. I then go back to the lily pad and paint it green again. And disaster struck and his thumb fell off, but no worries, Gorilla Glue saved the day. Then I give him some little highlights in his eyes before then Gorilla Gluing the mace part onto the golden wire. And that's everything, so thank you so much for watching, and now it's time for the glamour shots.